talking. We'll get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we can see our flag. So I pledge allegiance
to the
flag of the United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. That gets us to our report from PW Litchfield Heritage Center, and I understand from Nancy that they will not have a report today. They are in the middle of a plateau in which they're working on a variety of things, but not a lot to report. So we'll go to the council members' report, and I'll start in order of the council members I see across the top, and that starts with Lisa Brainerd Watson.
I, like most everybody else, attended the virtual town hall, state of the city address or meeting, and thought it was well done in terms of put together. You guys at the city did a great job, and I thank you for your patience with those of us who needed to do retakes on our comments. Thank you very much. Mayor, your comments were particularly well done. Thank you. I haven't done much else. Unfortunately, wish I could say there was a lot going on, but kind of trapped with COVID and other issues.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Strostosi.
My only comment would be that Mayor, I thought you did a great job at the State of the City. So good job and thank you. Otherwise, nothing to report.
Well, thank you. Councilman Romack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Typically, as always, you do a really nice job at the State of the City, and it's very informative, and I think it helps all of us to really know exactly where we're at with a lot of different issues. As far as I'm concerned, we had a meeting last night with Matthew and with Woody, and it was very enlightening. And I was happy to leave when the meeting was over. So with that, I will move on to someone else. Thank you.
Councilman Donahue.
Actually, what I loved the most about the town hall was that I kept turning to the right and referring to the mayor who wasn't there. So that was awesome. Anyway, I actually have a couple things. I attended the Westmark annual meeting virtually, and it was really well done. Basically talked about what we all know, and that's the population's coming west, businesses coming west, and very interestingly talked about ages 30 to 40 or 50 or so, that those kids 30 to 40, they get to a certain level, they're moving on. So they're trying to bring in higher level jobs so that these kids can be promoted and stay here, which I thought was really interesting. I also, we reconnected with our city center marketing group, so that we met there, and we're trying to come together with some branding and some names on what we might call it and so forth. So that's moving forward. That's a good thing. A lot of creatives sitting in a table. And then just a little bit of a schools report. I think some of this is correct. It looks like Litchfield is going to be going back in person gradually, starting with the lower age kids first, and then by March 1st, hopefully everybody. High school's a little behind that. All the teachers coming back February 24th, and high school, they hope by the end of March. That's just because obviously it's a little trickier to manage high schoolers. So we're moving forward, I hope, back to school, just in order, like 6 weeks before it's done for summer, but at least they're returning. So anyway, that's all.
Thank you. Councilman Clare.
Second, third, or fourth, whatever everyone else is saying, the State of the City was great. I enjoyed everyone's presentation, and also the residents, the questions they asked. I thought they were good questions about what we put out there and what's going on. So that was great. And the only thing I'd add is I was fortunate enough to go get my second shot at the State Farm Center for the COVID. And those guys are doing an amazing job out there. And I think we should absolutely encourage anyone that has the eligibility to go get a shot to please do. they knock it out. It was simple. It was easy. Everybody down there seemed to care and really tried to make it an easy process. So that was wonderful.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. It doesn't look like the vice mayor has joined us yet. So we'll go to my report, which is short. Thank you for the kind comments about the state of the city. The staff deserves the majority or all of the kudos for doing a great job at putting that together. It was not an easy undertaking to get, to really, I'd say it's really more like corral all of the different videos that were needed, to make this one video. And I want you to know, Ann, that I felt you throughout my talk. I knew you were sitting there looking at me all the time. It put me in a very uneasy position, but with that, we're going to move on and we'll go to the city manager's report. Matthew, do you have a report?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So you have the report in your packet, so I'm just going to hit on a few high points. One is you'll see preschool reopened for in-person learning on January 4th. And since then, our enrollment has more than doubled since January 4th. So that's great news for preschool. Of course, they are going by best COVID practices, et cetera, to keep all the kids safe. We have hired someone for the HRIT position. That is a new position that's combining some different duties, and she'll be starting February 22nd. We did hold the budget kickoff meeting last week as it's getting to be budget season. Also, we're having a lot of meetings with our bond agency to see what financing we can line up for City Center. Woody and I have been discussing with Southwest Gas about a gas line. They're planning on installing a 12-inch high-pressure gas line 2 years after the City Center roundabout is built, and it's going to go right through the middle of the roundabout. So obviously, we're trying to get them to build it at the same time we're doing the construction versus digging it up 2 years later. So we're trying to see what we can do to make that happen. Councilmember Mack already mentioned the Peninsula meeting that was held last night. A few other things, the Camelback Park and Turtle Park bathrooms are both currently closed for repairs. One of them for a pipe and one of them for some doors that are being replaced, just so you're aware of that. Also, Councilmember Donahue mentioned we do have the City Center Working Group and the Marketing Group are both running again. So we're glad to see those groups going and making good progress on City Center and getting things up and running again. You may have seen we're now expecting 2020 census results to be back by April the 1st. They keep getting delayed. They were supposed to be done by last September and delayed again. And now we're looking at April 1st. We'll see if that actually happens again for the 2020 census. The last thing I would tell you is that the Goodyear bill for $8 million for the Camelback widening did make it to appropriations last week. That's $8 million of a total $56 million project cost. And there's been a lot of discussions back and forth between us and the city of Goodyear as far as how that widening will be done. And we'll keep you informed as we know more on that issue. As always, I welcome any questions if there are any.
Any questions from any members of the council? I don't see any. Thank you for your report, Matthew. And I want to tell you that I think the weekly report that you're putting out is much more helpful because of the fact that you've condensed it into information that is more potentially more of interest to the council members, and it makes the report a lot more usable because it's not quite so long. So thank you for doing that. Next item.
I would agree with that. Thank you.
Next item on the, I'm sorry, go ahead. Did you have something else to say, Matthew?
No, sir, I was just saying thank you.
Okay. Next item is presentations for this meeting. We have a proclamation for the National School Breakfast Week that is in your packet. I'm not going to read it in this virtual setting because I think it probably is not a good use of our time. But I do want to say that it brought back a lot of memories of David Schwacke. David actually was the individual that got me involved in going over to the school each year and serving breakfast. It's unfortunate that the kids apparently are not there because I didn't get an invitation this year. And I know on occasion I could see there were other council members that had participated in that. And I assume no one got invitations because that was not that opportunity was not available this year. The school breakfast program that's run through Litchfield Elementary School is tremendous, and it does a lot of good for a lot of our kids. And so We should remember David Schwacke and remember the school kids as part of this proclamation. And with that, we're going to go on to the next item, which is our report section. We have a report from Goodyear Fire Department, and it says that we have Chief Cole here with us.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, so we can see you, and it's nice to see even your virtual self.
That's great. I'm not sophisticated enough to have a virtual background, so you're looking at my office / workout room in my home.
Perfect.
So getting to the month of January, the good news, if there is some, is that last year this time in January we had 88 calls for service, which was a remarkably busy month in the park. This January we had a total of 67 calls, no fires. 63 of those calls for service were emergency medical calls. We had 1 gas leak and 3 good intent calls, which are basically cancellations of a call that otherwise would have been a legitimate call. Again, a total of 67 calls, which constitutes a 24% drop from the previous year. And average wise, I mean, it looks like we're on par with last year for total number of calls, and this far into the fiscal year, that's notable. As far as the calls themselves, look like pretty much the average EMS calls. I do think that the elephant in the room is the fact that we had so many calls at La Hacienda del Rey, the care facility over on Las Cruces. So I spent some time speaking with Mr. Williams earlier in the week. I'm grateful for his time, and we have put together a strategy to go once again meet with Ms. Bechtold over there and discuss our concerns and help her reduce the number of calls in that facility. So it is high on our list of things to get done, and we're certainly going to share all of our strategies with her, similar to what we've done before at La Loma, to try and reduce the number of calls in that particular facility. As far as trend analysis goes, that 67 did constitute 12 calls per 1,000 population. For the same time period in the city of Goodyear, we had 860 calls, which constitutes 9. So it's a bit of a spike. You've been up in the 13, 11 range before, 9 the last 2 months. Goodyear runs anywhere between 8 and 10 on average. As far as other activities in Litchfield Park, for the month of January, 2 plan reviews, 2 construction permits, 1 construction inspection, and 17 occupancy inspections. So that's the data regarding the month of January. I'm more than happy to entertain any questions Mayor, council might have regarding activities.
Do we have any questions from the council? It looks like Councilman Donahue has her hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question about Hacienda del Rey. Do they not have medical people there?
Mr. Mayor, Council Member Donahue, they do have medical folks there. They do not have the same type of expertise that the fire department has. So typically, you'll have nursing folks in there. You'll have LPNs or caregivers. So they do have a certain level of training, but not the emergency medical type training that the fire department has or that a hospital would have.
Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, actually, to further my question, I guess what I'm asking, I had an aunt that lived there years ago who's passed now, but they had actually a head nurse. And my question to you is, are most of these calls actual emergencies, or is it transport?
So it's a mix. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Donahue, it is a mix. Of those 27 calls in the month of January, 17 calls were transports. And that's, that's one of the bars we look at. A transport to the hospital is a pretty legitimate reason for us to be there. Which leaves another 10 calls that were not transports. Of those calls, looking over the charts and looking over the dispatch information, I really believe that another 4 of those were legitimate reasons for us to be there and do an evaluation of a patient. Sometimes we'll get there based on some symptoms that have been observed by the staff, and they need us to come in and do an evaluation. If the patient is stable and we've kind of worked out a strategy with the staff, there's times when those folks can stay behind. We speak to family, we speak to their, even at times speak to their medical provider on the phone, just to make sure we have a strategy to take care of anything if it gets worse, or if they have a follow-up with their physician. That leaves us about 6 calls that we believe staff should have mitigated without having to call 911. So it was a very busy month at Hacienda del Rey. I mean, 17 transports out of a facility that size is just really a busy month. But we do believe that working with staff, we can make a difference and we can knock these numbers down somewhat. So as I explained to Mr. Williams earlier in the week, we've got a meeting scheduled between our EMS chief and the City of Avondale Fire Department's EMS chief, who we work very closely with. They respond to the facility as well. And we believe we can make a difference working with Ms. Bechtold over there. And that is definitely our intention.
Anything we can do to support you, Chief, we will do, and we'll do that both from staff and from the council. So let us know if there's something we can do to help.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'd just like to say that those are almost exactly the same words that Mr. Williams shared with me earlier. He's also very interested in doing whatever the city can do to make a difference. And we're going to work this part of our strategy and report back to you, let you know how the numbers look, and then obviously we'll work together on a plan. So thank you for that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from council? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you for your report. Thank all your firefighters for the service they give to our citizens. We sincerely appreciate all of their efforts to promote our public safety. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. And it is a privilege for the men and women of the Goodyear Fire Department to serve Litchfield Park. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll go on to Captain Bratton, who's here, I can see. Captain, you have a report from MCSO for this month?
Yes, sir. Mayor, council, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The activity report for this month, we had 1 commercial burglary. We had 1 theft from a vehicle, which has been consistently decreasing, which is a good thing. The shoplifting, we've had 5, 1 disorderly conduct, 4 criminal damage, 1 DUI, 7 traffic accidents, 6 written warnings, 4 citations, 1 harassment or stalking call, 2 trespassing, 1 animal problem, juvenile disturbing or runaway, 3 neighbors disturbing, 2 suspicious activity for persons with the vehicle reported, 2 citizen assists, parking violation, 2 commercial alarms, 3 residential alarms, 3 civil matters, 2 natural deaths persons, and 2 community policing contacts, 42 patrol and vacation. Just a note on the traffic citations, which is significantly lower than previous months. We've had a few staffing assignment issues, but the issue's been addressed, and we'll start emphasizing the actual deputy that's working the beat to bring those activities up, the enforcement activity up. We relied a lot on our full support squad, which had to pretty much come in other staffing issues. So we've passed that word to the supervisors, and they're gonna. And then just as a note, I had some communications with Matthew in regards via email regarding the truck traffic. And we're reaching out to UPS at the hub, try and get ahead of it. If we can't make contact with supervisors to put something out, not only let them know ahead of time that, you know, this ordinance has been in place, but also letting them know that we're going to be enforcing best we can. It does create a few challenges for us because we don't have truck certified deputies, truck inspectors. So some of that challenge is going to be following the vehicles to see what their route is, to see if they actually are in violation for they truck control devices. And then also, as far as the speeding issues that we've had some complaints on, we've reached out. I know that a lot of those are coming from some of the personnel at the base. Going to try to use some of the contacts we have there to have some messages. Try to get the military personnel that are coming into the base to travel through the area. To let them know, one, we're going to be stepping up enforcement. Having such increased.
You're breaking up a little bit, so I'm not sure if you're finished or if you still had things more you wanted to say, Captain.
That's all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'm sorry, my speaker apparently, or my microphone kind of cuts in and out.
Yeah, for a moment you were perfect, and then that perfect moment didn't last. Are there questions or comments from council? Councilman Brainerd Watson.
First of all, thank you for all you and your work, your officers do, excuse me. We so appreciate you guys, and we appreciate all that you do for keeping our community safe. And then I wondered, have you guys seen changes this year in the nature of activities with the implications of COVID, particularly with our younger citizens?
I guess I'm not quite sure.
Oh, you know, the part of the national narrative is that, and it's true, we know this is effect that COVID and the closing of schools is having a very detrimental effect on our younger population. The isolation is causing lots of issues for them. I'm just wondering, are you seeing that play out in your world? Are you seeing that?
You know, there's been discussions throughout law enforcement that there is an uptick and there are issues, but statistically on our end, I haven't seen those increases, and we haven't been dealing with a higher number of juvenile issues, whether it be suicide threats or runaways or other disturbances at home. We just haven't really seen an uptick in it.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilman Clare.
Thank you, Captain. I have a couple questions for you, if you don't mind. First, when we have staffing issues, what do you guys do in a backup manner if the person that's assigned to our area is not active? If things aren't happening because we're having a staffing issue, I don't want to be a forgotten space here. Shouldn't there be some type of backup plan for something happening other than waiting on calls to happen?
There is, you know, when I say that we're having staffing issues, the deputies that are providing the service within Litchfield Park, they're there and they are responding to calls for service. It's just that we've relied a little bit too heavily, I think, on our support squad. So it's not a part of the contract that we provide that. It's something that, so that they don't have other responsibilities, that squad doesn't. So primarily they go out, they have a traffic car, and they make traffic stops, and that's all they do. They don't respond to calls for service. And we've relied on that pretty heavily for those type of stats. And so we're just going to have to refocus some of that on the deputy working the beat as opposed to just responding to calls for service. The emphasis needs to be on, they need to be productive on view activity, more so than what they would and not rely so much on it. And so we have all of the minimum staffing that we always have on the road at all times. And we do call in people for overtime and cover vacancy, but it's just that patrol squad that we've had to diminish and we've relied on too much.
Understand, is our contract, do we have for what you see in our needs, do we have enough staff based on the contract that we have right now?
We do, yes.
Okay. And then my last question or next question, I'm in trucking and I'm getting a lot of comments from people that I speak to around town about the no truck zone, asking questions. When are we going to start to enforce this? I mean, everyone in my fleet, they have a bill of lading that shows where they're going. It shouldn't be that difficult to find out where a truck is supposed to go, especially these are concrete and gravel trucks that are going. There has to be a construction site that they're headed to. But these trucks are going day and night, and something has to be done. We have to start stopping people and enforcing this in some way, because it's the reason we passed this was to keep these trucks out of our area and keep the quiet for the residents, and we're just not getting it right now. So I'm asking if there's anything we can do, or what do you need from us to help you guys start to enforce this act? I know the signs are up, they're not great, but signage is up, and we just have to start making something happen on this.
There are a few spots that I'll suggest that, if you can increase signage. I think particularly southbound routes coming through the city. Our biggest issue is, concrete trucks, stuff like that. I think if they're spotted, they can be followed and seen that they are just using it as a quick shortcut. And it's an easy enforcement action that we can take on something like that. Other trucks that we can't be assured that there's not, like a concrete truck, there's no construction zone, so we know they're probably just making a shortcut. But other trucks, if we don't see their route, where they're coming from, we have to have probable cause to make stops, unless you're a truck inspector. The truck inspectors can make stops to do safety inspections, and then they go through a series of other checks on the driver and truck and their logs. But without that, if they're not certified for that, they'd have to have other probable cause reasons to make those stops. So that's why we're initially trying to reach out to UPS. Any other the commercial areas within the area that we think might be culprits, try to stop it on that end, and then come up with what we can to best work on the enforcement.
Understand. Is there a secondary enforcement group that we should reach out to help with the enforcement of the no trucks then?
I can reach out. I'm sorry, I can reach out, see if we have any truck inspectors, to see if we can put something together on a just kind of a occasional basis. It's not going to be somebody that they'll be able to dedicate to this area. And it's something we could look at to see if we could certify somebody as a truck inspector. It's just, it takes a little bit of extra training, and they do have required refreshers and recertifications.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your answers.
Any other questions or comments from council? Just a quick comment, Captain, that we really do need to get serious about the through truck issue. And I in many settings, your sheriff officers would have difficulty knowing if someone had violated the no through truck provision. But in our situation, they literally are looking for a truck that's traveling a mile or a mile and a half. So it isn't like they're having to tail this truck for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And they are driving through this area in a fairly quick manner, and it would seem like your officers could, even though they're not there, we don't care about having the trucks inspected for every type of safety violation. We just want to get their companies to understand that we want them to reroute these trucks, because it is becoming a really big problem for our residents that live anywhere near one of these major roads like Litchfield Road or Camelback. So whatever you can do to help us get that enforcement going, we would appreciate it. And if we need to contact the companies, if you know who we should contact, we will devote staff time to contacting the companies to make them aware of what the rules are so that they don't, so they have an opportunity to reroute the trucks or plan the routes for these trucks accordingly. We're not interested in writing tickets as much as we're interested in getting people to respect the rules.
Okay. We have started to reach out to those companies, and if there are other companies, I'll definitely reach out, but we will put something together to start some enforcement.
Okay. Councilman Donahue.
So the majority of the trucks we're talking about are probably coming from 303 businesses, correct?
Right.
Because, and I, like the county supervisor that approved that plot with the FedEx, whatever, part of that is going to say they cannot turn east when they come out of there, correct? They're going to have to go right. I'm just thinking as that goes, more and more trucks are going to find out about this. But in the meantime, the alert with the sign, I know we can't make a sign that big, but we almost need a sign that big. Says do not,
That's our intention, is to reach out to as many of the companies as we can, because if we can contact, the supervisors or managers at those companies, that spreads fast, knowing that they potentially would get citations. I mean, that's their livelihood, and it really makes an impact on them. So I think that'll help a lot.
Mayor, one point.
Questions or comments?
Yes, sir.
Mr.
Mr.
City
Mayor.
Manager.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and council, just for your awareness, staff did send a letter out to the local trucking companies about 6 months ago, and to all the big companies that are surrounding our area that would have traffic coming through, to let them know this ordinance is in place. Here's the restrictions, here's the guidelines, that sort of thing. We also sent them to companies that wouldn't have as much traffic, smaller companies, such as furniture companies. Obviously, they have trucks coming in. You wouldn't think of, obviously, UPS, there'd be a different frequency of volume. But we did send some notifications, some documents out to these companies roughly 6 months ago to let them know this ordinance was in place and would be enforced accordingly. Just for your awareness.
Thank you. All right, anything else? Don't see anything, Captain. Thank you for your efforts and the efforts of all the deputies that have helped us, over the last month. We appreciate their efforts.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda looks like we have a new item for the city center update. Do we have a report from Mr. Scouten this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just a brief update. Since the last time we talked during your January meeting, we have changed our approach to the GMPs slightly so that we can maybe get started a little bit sooner and ease into the bigger work. So the plan now is to have the first GMP to include, and again, this is the guaranteed maximum price that our contractor, Aiken Gardner, will give us for this work, for this scope of work. The first GMP would include demolishing of the existing wall, tree removals, clearing, other site removals, which are old pavement and old concrete that's on the site, and rough grading of the streets. And the reason we want to get the streets rough graded is so that when we're putting in the utilities under the second GMP, that we're not digging a trench any deeper than we have to. And then the second GMP would be all of the underground work, all the dry utilities, wet utilities, water, sewer, and the storm drains, to get all of the underground work finished. And then the third GMP would come in and do the paving, the roundabout, all the work on Litchfield Road and the extension of Village Parkway into the site and the first phase of the park. So a little bit different approach, but I think this will help us kind of get the work started a little bit sooner, and also keep the contractor going on the site without having to demobilize and wait for the next phase. We continue to work on completing all the plans. We're essentially finished with all of them, but we're finishing up the last details right now. And as City Manager Matthew mentioned, we have had some interest in a couple of the parcels on the project by developers, so we're pretty excited about that. And the other thing is that we're getting deeply into financing arrangements, if you will, for being able to finance all that work that I just talked about through a combination of cash on hand, bonding, maybe even a CFD or improvement district, something like that. So I'm working on that right now and hope to have something for the working group here fairly shortly. That's all I have.
Just a piece of information before I open it up. The concept of the financing that staff is working on is to divide this big nut we have on the cost of all the improvements to 3 different pieces or different slices. One slice is that the city would look at as being normal capital improvement type expense that the city would bear either from its cash balances, or it would bear in some process of financing or phase in of the expense itself. So an example of that might be park. The park, just like we did Scout Park, that park may get built in over a period of time, and the financing for doing the work on the park may well come from the city itself, as opposed to having it look into the whole development cost of that park. Another slice of that pie is costs should be allocated to the entire development through some sort of a process like a community facilities district or an improvement district. So costs that really relate to the ability to have the entire development, which benefits all of the businesses that are going to be located in the development. Taking those costs and putting them into a long-term bond that would be financed through a CFD type property tax. And that would apply only to the land that's in the city center that's being benefited by these expenses. And then the third slice of the pie is to look at expenses that benefit only the particular parcel of land. So things like half-street improvements are an easy example of something that only benefits the parcel itself. So we're hoping by breaking these costs up and breaking them in a way that is more similar to what many of the developments across the valley are doing anyway, that we can get these costs into buckets that are reasonable and that will make sense to the people who want to come in and do the development. This work is actually the most important work that we have to do on the city center, because until we can answer how does this thing work from a financial standpoint, how do we structure the finance to get some of these things done, we really can't start on doing them, because it is the key to make a sustainable financial venture, not only for the city, but for every business who we hope will locate there. So it is tremendously important, and it is the highest priority that is going on now within the staff for the effort to get this thing to the point where council can take a look at it, and hopefully there'll be a plan that can be brought forth that everyone can be comfortable with and say that it's something that can work. Councilman Romack. You got to take your mute off, Councilman Romack. We're missing all your words.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just want to back up with what you're saying, Mr. Mayor, that this is pretty typical. If you go out to Verrata, you'll find there's any number of these kinds of layers of, I'm going to call them taxes, but they're not really, but these layers of fees and expenses that are borne by the users it allows the developer to actually make all of this project happen. So it is pretty normal for this type of financing to occur, and I would support those things that Mr. Mayor is saying.
Yeah, we ran into a problem when we thought this financial nut was going to be smaller than what it turned out to be. So, we thought it would be a significantly smaller. And so as we started trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that was not going to be confusing to everyone in terms of what they're paying for, and that did not present the costs to the developer in a way that was substantially different than the way developers are used to seeing the costs, so that they didn't understand what was being done either. It was a problem. So it led us to the necessity to try to design this in a more financially more astute manner, because these costs are borne by everyone who does this type of development. I mean, this isn't something that's unusual. We just have to determine or figure out how do we design a financial structure so that it works, and so that it gives a picture to the developers that are similar to what they see when they look at land to be developed in other jurisdictions.
Anywhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Councilman Brainerd Watson. You need to get your mute on. There you go.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mouse to work. My question, Woody, is for you. I saw somewhere in some of the information I was looking through today that Southwest Gas is going to need to come back in 2 years after we do this work to put in a natural gas line on Litchfield Road. Is that old Litchfield or the Litchfield bypass?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Brainerd Watson, this is a main replacement project that Southwest Gas has actually been working on for several years now. And if you remember Litchfield Road through Goodyear being torn up a couple of years ago, that's part of that project. So they're just gradually moving north. Originally, they were going to put the new main in the Desert Avenue alignment, but then they shelved that project. And as we started getting going on the city center, I asked Southwest Gas, what are you doing with that project? Because we're getting ready to build new streets here and we don't want them torn up. And they finally got back to me and said, well, we've now changed our approach and we're going to build a 12-inch main in Litchfield Road in 2023. And I said, well, that's, 2 years after we will have done all these improvements. So we can't have that. So city manager and I got on the phone with Southwest Gas, made them completely aware of what a poor situation that would be. And they are now looking at options and we're just waiting for them to get back to us.
Have they suggested at all putting in a sleeve and maybe vaults on opposing ends of it so that we don't have to tear up even the right of way?
Yeah, we've been talking about sleeves with them ever since I found out that they abandoned that original project. And I said, well, we can at least put a sleeve in. Well, we don't do that with our high pressure mains.
That's what I was wondering if it was high pressure.
Yeah, it's I'm sure they have some special requirements for these high pressure gas mains, and a sleeve doesn't appear to be one of those options.
So it is in the alignment of the, it is an old Litchfield Road.
No, it's in Litchfield Road or Litchfield Bypass, where we're going to build. Maybe I confused you. The original alignment was going to be in Desert Avenue, where the old gas main is now. So that's, that runs west of the church, for example.
Right.
It runs up the cart, Councilman Watson, it runs up literally the cart path or the pathway that goes along, that extends all the way north after Desert stops. There's the cart path that is in between the homes on Alegre and some of those streets in that area. That there's a high pressure gas line, and there's placards along that pathway that inform you about it. So it's moving that line from there over to Litchfield Road to the bypass.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council? Okay, thank you for your report, Mr. Scouten.
Thank you.
Next item up is the finance report. Ms. Peterson.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight I have our financial report through the end of January. I'd like to share my screen with you real quick. So this is our monthly sales tax revenue through the end of January. We had another good month with retail sales up 16% this January over January of 2020. The online sales took a huge jump, but I think it's still too early to measure that because businesses were still learning how to report it at this time in 2020. Restaurant and bars, unfortunately, are down 17%. Utilities are up 14%, rentals are up 2%, and then the other categories up 5%. So subtotal without construction, this January is 12% higher than last January. Construction was down 13%. Two of those together were up 7% over last January. Year-to-date totals, you can see retail is doing very well. Year-to-date, it's 24% higher than last year. This is an anomaly, that 260%, but it's good to see the online sales tax that the Wayfair bill is generating. Restaurant and bars in total are down 6%. Utilities are up 22%. Rentals are up 13%, and then the other is down 3%. That includes the tourism type activities. Year-to-date construction is up 9%, and the grand total we're up 17%. So still doing very well. Before I move on to the summary report, are there any questions on sales tax?
Questions, council? Don't see any.
Okay. And did that swap over to this new report? Is it the, can you see the City of Litchfield Park General Fund unaudited budgetary basis at the top?
Yes.
Okay. The local taxes, I just went over the bulk of that. This is mostly sales tax, but it also includes some other local taxes. It's up 71%. Our state shared revenue is, or I'm sorry, it's not up 71%. We're at 71% of budget, and we're at 58% of the year. So doing very well. State shared revenue is also over budget expectations at 60%. This one-time intergovernmental is the CARES money. Licenses and permits at 50%, which is not too bad considering all the COVID impacts. Recreation charges, strictly due to COVID, is only at 16%. Special events is at 27%. Fines are at 60%. Interest is only at 6% just because of these historically low interest rates. And then our miscellaneous revenue is at 102%. So grand total, our total revenues are doing very well. We're at 62% of budget expectations. Our operating expenditures by department, if we look at the general fund as a whole, we're only at 54% out of 58% of the year. This is an anomaly here. The city manager budget, that's where we're charging the COVID business assistance program to. So later in the year, I'll be bringing you a budget amendment to correct that. The other budget departments that are over 58% are budget and finance. That's because we paid our annual auditors and the Microsoft licenses, some other one-time costs, but this will smooth out and we should come in under budget. And the other one is our debt service, and that's because the debt service has been paid in full for the year. Our construction sales tax, which we consider one time, is at 84% of budget. Our capital expenses are at 485,000. That leaves our general fund ending fund balance at 14.9 million at the end of January. And rec services, revenues are at 16%, expenditures are at 33%, and they've recovered 22% of their costs. Special events, 27% of revenue, or their revenue is at 27% of budget. Expenses are 43%, but they have been able to recover 51% of their costs. So with everything considering, they're doing very well to be able to recover at that rate. Our special revenue funds, the highway user revenue fund, we are just under budget. I'm not too concerned about it. I think we'll come in right at budget or maybe just below. Our street maintenance expenditures, 85%, and capital projects are at 26%. So total, we've spent just over 276,000 of our HERF fund. And that leaves an ending balance of 1.3 million at the end of January. The streetlight improvement districts are doing, they're exactly where they should be. Court enhancement has earned a little interest. They have an ending fund balance just under 193,000. So in summary, the general fund ending balance is 14.9 million. Our special revenue funds is 1.7, with a grand total of 16.696 million. And that leaves, there's plenty for our minimum fund balance of 15%, our 35% stabilization fund. That leaves an unassigned fund balance in the general fund of 10.6 million, which is just under 21 months of expenditures. However, with the city center project really ramping up this money that has been put aside for that, we will start spending this down. And that is all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Was an excellent job, Ms. Peterson, because we have no questions.
Thank you.
So I spoke too soon. John,
I lost my record.
He was raising his hand, but it was just slowly. Councilman Romack.
All I would say is, Paige, you're lucky to be in this position right now because the city finances seem so good. And I would like to congratulate you and thank you for the job well done. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think the thank you is to the council for creating such a retail-based city and got the city in this great financial position. But thank you for the nice compliment.
Thank you.
Let Mr. City Manager and Ms. Peterson let staff know that we appreciate the fact that they are consistently coming in under budget. We would not be in as good a financial position if staff was not managing a tight ship, and we do appreciate that.
We'll pass it along. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to our next item of business, which is the consent agenda. Items 7A through C. Is there any council who would like to take any item off of the consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda items 7A through C?
I'll move.
Is there a second? Councilman Brainerd Watson seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. So consent agenda is adopted unanimously. Now we'll go on to the business agenda, item 8A, which is an extension of the premises patio permit liquor license. It's a recommendation to the Arizona Department of Liquor License for Tap Savvy. This is either approve, deny, or make no recommendation. Do we have a presentation from our city clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. In your packet tonight, is an application from Tap Savvy, which is located in the Wigwam Creek Shopping Center for an extension of premise and patio. They are participating in the business extension program, which was created by staff to assist our businesses during the COVID-19 crisis. The business currently holds a current business license, and the city would receive 2.8% sales tax from sales. And as you mentioned, Mayor, your authority is not to approve or deny, but to make a recommendation to approve, deny, or no recommendation. Have any questions?
Any questions from staff? Councilman Donahue? Yes.
So
Councilman
Terry, I looked at the drawing and I shop at Albertsons, but so they just want allowed to serve alcohol outside. They just want to be able to put a patio out front in there, like they showed, right?
Yes.
So alcohol and food, like I think they have, yeah. So they just want to be able to come outside, which we had talked about a long time ago and support that. Is that what this is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from council? Seeing none, is there a motion to recommend approval of this, the application by Tap Savvy to the Arizona Department of Liquor Licensing Control?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we recommend approval.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Ryan. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank
Looks like the
you.
motion is adopted unanimously to recommend approval. Next item, number 8B, is fiscal officer, Ms. Peterson.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is, it's really a formality that all government entities have to do every year, is designate a chief fiscal officer to submit the expenditure limitation report. This was something that you did for me early on when I first started for fiscal year 21. However, I did sign and already submit the fiscal year 20 report to the Auditor General, and they still had Mr. Lars Johnson recorded as the CFO for that year. So all this will do is appoint me, and then they can accept the report.
Is there a motion to appoint Ms. Peterson as our Director of Finance as the Chief Financial or Chief Fiscal Officer for fiscal year 20, so she can deal with the Arizona Auditor General?
So move.
Moved by Councilman Romack, seconded by Councilman Watson. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Next is the City Center Public Utilities Easement. Mr. Scouten.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Back when we first started working on the City Center project, we decided that we were not going to plat the project to create the lots and the public street rights of way. So the approach then became that we would sell the parcels through a meets and bounds legal description. Which then ultimately, after we sell all the parcels, leaves the streets under city ownership. The utility companies, water, sewer, telecommunications, gas, APS, they all require that their facilities be located in either a public utilities easement or physical right-of-way so that they can have access to their facilities to maintain them. So since we aren't going to have right-of-way for the streets, then the next best approach is to declare a public utilities easement over all of the streets in the city center. And there's actually another water line easement that's a part of this that would be across the north side of parcel 2 that provides for a water system connection that will provide looping for the system. So this item tonight is to for the city to declare that public utility easement over the streets of the city center and have that recorded so that the utility companies can be comfortable that their facilities are located within an area that they have access to.
Just a question, Mr. Scouten. These streets are, excuse me, we certainly hope that the streets and that, the grid kind of layout that we have is 99% or 95% fixed. There still are some conversations about the actual design of certain areas, whether there'll be a street or a parking lot, and then referring to Honeysuckle, and some discussion about whether we really want a street that extends all the way to Wigwam Boulevard on La Loma. So the question is, if we do this easement, public utilities easement, is there enough flexibility in the areas that we've designated so that the utilities can be located, whether it happens to be a street or it happens to be a shared parking area or it happens to be, a driveway?
Yes, the answer to that, Mayor, is yes. Because this is a public utilities easement, we can come back and modify it in the future if we need to. If, for example, a segment of a street doesn't get built and we decide that there won't be any utilities in that segment, that we've moved the utilities somewhere else. The segment that I think you're referring to between Honeysuckle and Wigwam, well, the portion of La Loma between Honeysuckle and Wigwam may not be built. We have a water line and some other dry utilities in that area, which would then have to be relocated out of there, especially if a building was going to be built over that. If a building was not going to be built over it and it was a driveway or just left as open space, then of course the public utilities easement could remain in place and the utilities could remain in place. So yes, we do have flexibility. In the case of Honeysuckle Street, if you recall, we did move the water and sewer lines so that they could be accommodated by either design for Honeysuckle Street, and the PUE will work with either one of those designs.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Councilman Romack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Woody, is there any way that we can get some sort of not guarantee, but some just to be satisfied that when they do dig up the streets and it happens too often, that they'll replace it with what they've removed? I don't know whether these streets are going to be cobblestone or they're going to be old brick paver or whatever they may be, but I want to be satisfied that the utilities will put back what they take out.
Yes, Councilmember Romack, Mr. Mayor, we satisfy that in two ways. One is that, and these are both sections in our code. One is that anytime a utility company comes in and works in one of our rights of way, they are required to return that surface, whether it's landscaping or asphalt, whatever it might be, return that surface to original conditions after their work. And we issue permits and we do inspections to make sure that they take care of that they do that. The other section is regarding pavement cuts. So if a utility comes in and cuts pavement that's less than 7 years old, they're required to do a mill and overlay. But the short answer to your question is yes, we're covered under at least a couple sections of our code in that regard.
Okay, good. I appreciate that, Woody. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If none, is there a motion to approve and direct the city clerk to record a public utilities easement over the roadways and other public areas within the city center in accordance with the easement document and legal description that was presented to council? Moved by Councilman Watson, seconded by Councilman Donahue. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Say nay. Motion carries unanimously. Going on then to item number D. Mr. Scouten, do you have a report on the pavement maintenance and capital contingency funds?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This is some of our standard pavement treatments that we need to do to our streets in order to keep them in the best condition that we can, given traffic and weather and so on. So we're doing a little bit of catch up here in that we have a lot of streets that have a need for crack sealing, surface sealing, which is basically just putting a sealer on the surface to make sure the water doesn't do too much damage, and then micro seal, which is actually putting a new surface on the street. In the packet, I provided 3 maps showing the streets that are in need of those treatments, those 3 different kinds of treatments. That's about, what you see on the maps is about $600,000 to $700,000 worth of pavement treatments that are needed. And we're going to do this with HERF fund, and we originally had budgeted $850,000 for street improvements, and we've used some of that HERF money and that budget authority to build other street-related projects during the year. So that only left us with about $150,000 to do these more routine street pavement treatments, which isn't enough. So in this item, I've asked for council to transfer $200,000 of the budget authority from the HERF fund into the streets fund so that we would have a total of $350,000 so we could get a pretty good start on catching up on maintaining these streets. And as you saw in the packet, I have received a proposal from Ace Asphalt in the amount of just under $350,000 to do the 3 types of street pavements that we talked about. So staff recommends approval of a budget transfer of $200,000 with the existing $150,000 left in the budget for street improvements for a total of $350,000. And award a contract to Ace Asphalt.
Ms. Peterson, how much will be left in our HERF money that can be spent on road maintenance after if we were to do this transfer, 100,000?
I don't see her, sir. Do you?
I see her, but I can't hear her, but I don't see a button either.
Sorry about that. I was double muted on, I had my cell phone muted as well. I apologize. I sent all of this to Woody when he was getting the agenda item ready, and I don't have it pulled up. Woody, by chance, do you have that email I sent you?
Yeah, somewhere.
If not, I can get it.
Let me see if I can find it.
I'm not in
Mayor?
Citrix, so
It's in your finance report.
While they're looking, when are her funds re-upped, so to speak?
They come in literally every month, I believe.
they do. They come in every month. Let me just get my calculator out really quick. It is in the finance report. 1 second.
Now, what it shows is the fund balance is $1,307,000.
Correct.
And at the end of the year, it's still got 900,000 left in it.
Yeah, let me read what Paige said in her email. The total FY 2021 HERF budget is 850,000. The beginning HERF fund balance was 1.3 million. So there's more money in the fund available than there is budget capacity. There is $1 million of authorized budget capacity and contingency for capital projects in order to complete the projects. Is that what you were referring to?
Yes, and thank you for refreshing my memory. If we budgeted 850,000, so if we spent everything we budgeted, there'd be 928,000 left. So adding this additional 200,000 or transferring the capacity from contingency over to HERF that would leave 728,000 in the fund approximately.
And are we limiting the amount of work that these HERF monies are not usable for anything other than fixing our streets. And I personally would just as soon see the streets get fixed as having HERF cash in the bank. So I'm just curious why, if we have identified that we need more than this 200,000 to get caught up on these streets that we've postponed work on over the last several years, why are we only doing $200,000 transfer as opposed to a $400,000 transfer?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's an issue of physically being able to get the work done between now and June 30th. It's
Okay.
That's a lot of work for Ace Asphalt to get done between now and the end of the fiscal year. So what I would probably do is come back to you immediately after the beginning of the fiscal year and ask for, you know, the first chunk of that streets budget to get going on taking care of the
Oh, yeah, I would urge you to, somebody's off of mute. Okay, I would urge you to become more aggressive at getting this money spent in a controlled manner, but let's use the HERF money that we have in the bank to fix the streets that we know need to be, that need work. Councilor Romack, did you have a comment?
My comment would be that property values take a hit when the streets aren't well maintained or kept up. I would say, and Woody knows this, we've talked about it. We walked the streets over here at the peninsula, and there's a couple of them that are coming unraveled. That's not really my comment. My comment is more to the fact that let's spend the money and let's get the streets up to some sort of standards that are acceptable here in our community.
Any other comments from council? Councilman Donahue?
Can that HERF money be used for the new street going in?
Ms. Peterson?
And which street is it? Is it a public street?
Oh, no, I'm talking about the new one we're going to build in from Village Parkway that's going to come into Litchfield. Can it be utilized for that?
Yeah, yes, it can be.
Mhm. Yeah, any road construction that's public road.
One of the things that we want to be careful on, and clearly the city center is our number one priority project. We have to remember that we can't let our streets get outside of the normal maintenance that we've got in our 10-year plan, because if we do, we'll end up with a mess and a lot larger expense in the future. So the thing that I've been concerned about is that we have built up such huge balances in these HERF monies spend for anything other than streets, that we need to work that balance down and get caught up on the 10-year plan so that we've got the streets being maintained on a regular basis every year.
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't agree with you more. And as I said, I will be able to come back to you immediately after the beginning of the next fiscal year and start on the next segment.
Okay, any other comments or questions by council? Okay, I don't see any. We need a motion to approve a contract with Ace Asphalt to provide the pavement as provided in the packet in an amount not to exceed $350,000 and authorize the use of capital contingency funds. I thought we were using HERF funds, not capital contingency. Is that an error in this council packet?
Mayor, it's the budget capacity is in the capital contingency, but the dollars will come from the HERF fund.
All right, so we're going to authorize use of the budget capacity and the capital contingency funds, but the dollars themselves are going to come from HERF monies. Is there a motion to make approval? Councilman Watson makes the motion. Is there a second? Councilman Romack seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is the executive session, which I don't believe we have any need for today. So if there's a motion to adjourn, we can all go home a little bit early this week.
I just have one quick question. Was part of
Yes,
the consent,
Donahue.
was part of the consent agenda, the appropriations for the two groups that applied? So we approved that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anything else for the good of the order from the council? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilman Donahue. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Clare. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you again for the time you've spent with us this evening. Thanks for all of our attendee participants. And then a question to the city clerk. I thought we were going to try to use this panel format. Did we decide that didn't work tonight?
No, we're going to. I'd already had this meeting scheduled. So for the March meeting, it will be the webinar format.
All right, so you'll see a slight difference next meeting with the format. So it'll be more like, it'll be the format that we used for the question period of the state of the city. So it'll be the screen you'll be looking at will be a little less busy, and we'll see how it works. But it worked well on Saturday. We'll see if it works well on the normal council meeting, and then take council comments to see if we want to continue that format. So that'll be something to look at our next meeting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Night.
Last night.